This is part 3 of a 3-part review of the Sendy Peacock. If you have not watched the 2 prior videos, then you really should. This video is broken into 3 sections. Section 1 will discuss the Peacock's value. Section 2 will summarize my findings of the Peacock's overall performance compared to the 14 other headphones I tested. And Section 3 will be devoted to talking about the nonsensical BS surrounding Uber Premium headphones. If you think you're going to be offended by what I have to say, then just don't watch. If you find yourself getting offended while watching, then move on to something else. Here's my bottom line. Other than the Peacock, I paid for every single headphone that I used in the Peacock's review. And even the Peacock is a loaner. So frankly, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care whether you buy one of these headphones or not. Let's discuss the Peacock's value proposition first. When I judge value, I have to think about how a headphone performs, whether I like its sound signature, and what the price is. Obviously, that's what everybody else does. Value is a subjective analysis. One person's value is another person's not value. Having heard the Peacock for about a month, having used it with all kinds of gear from cheap to super expensive, what can I say about the Peacock's value proposition? The Peacock is not value. Of course not. No piece of gear that costs this much money is value. You don't buy a $1,500 headphone looking for value. You don't spend $3,000 or $40,000 on full-cal speakers because you're looking for value. Value is finding a sound signature and performance you enjoy for the least amount of money. Maybe you disagree, but in my experience, you can find headphones well below $1,000 that give you 90 to 95% of the performance of these uber expensive headphones. In some instances, far cheaper headphones give you much better accessories, customer service, and longevity. Hell, if I want to dissect my music, why would I buy the HD800S when the Austrian Audio Hi-X55 and X65 exist for 1/3 the cost? If I wanted a neutral sound signature, why not just buy an Avantone planar instead of throwing down $4,000 for an LCD-4Z? The point is that products over $1,000 have to do something really unique to be considered value. You can have a different definition, but this is mine. So back to the question. No, the Peacock is not value. Just like all the other 14 headphones I tested in this review, none of these headphones are value. Typical audiophiles don't have $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 to spend on a singular headphone. These headphones are not aimed at those who are worried about value. Instead, Sendy Audio's goal was to present a headphone that competes with others in this price category. It's not for the value-driven audiophile. So, who is it for? I think this headphone, along with all the others in this price category, are for those who want to treat themselves to a nice gift. I mean, why do people buy Mercedes, BMWs, or even Cadillacs? You've got to be joking if you think these brands offer value. They don't. But people buy these luxury cars for name recognition, looks, and the luxuriousness they might offer. I don't tell people what to buy. Sometimes I warn them against buying something or doing business with a particular company, but I don't push you into making a purchase. With the Peacock, I'm not telling you to buy this headphone. If you're looking for an affordable headphone, clearly this is not going to make your list. But if you're looking at other headphones in this price category, if you're looking at other luxury cars, for example, well, that's a different analysis. If value is not the issue, and we're talking only about premium luxury where price is not really the principal issue, then we should continue our discussion. This dovetails into the next section. I've got a large collection of headphones from the whole swath of price categories. There are a couple of undeniable facts. First, headphones tend to have different sound signatures from one another. Second, sometimes differences are fairly stark depending on which products you compare. Third, you can generally quantify certain aspects of performance, such as soundstage, detail retrieval, placement, clarity, and separation. When we review gear, we have to try and keep our subjective preferences aside. Or if you can't, you have to underscore why you do or do not prefer a particular product. But just because you dislike a sound signature does not mean that the headphone is trash. The corollary is that if you love the sound signature, that does not mean the product is necessarily exceptional. So when I approached the Sendy Peacock, I looked at it with skepticism. I wanted to know what it does and how it compares to the other products. Generally speaking, the Peacock is a big, heavy, and cumbersome headphone. It's hardly different in this regard compared to Audeze's large LCD headphones. While the Peacock is a little bit lighter than the LCD3 and LCD4Z, it's just as girthy. This might be a turnoff if you don't want a heavy, large format headphone. If that's the case, then Audeze, Focal, Meze, and Sendy are equally guilty. The Peacock's sound signature is fairly neutral. In my view, neutral signature is one that does not emphasize or de-emphasize particular aspects of my music. This is not as the artist intended. I have no idea how you're even supposed to find out what the artist originally intended for you to hear. But we all need to have some baseline where we can start from. For me, that's a number of headphones I use to get an approximation of what I think is neutral. This includes the Avantone Planar, the Allo Audio S4X, and the Sennheiser HD6XX. When other headphones have performance that is similar to these three benchmarks, then I put them in the neutral category. I think the Peacock sound signature leans towards neutral. It, like every planar magnetic headphone I've heard, has a sub-bass roll-off and quick transients. This is consistent with the Avantone Planar. The Peacock has good separation between sub-bass and mid-bass, which is generally similar to other planar headphones. The Peacock's mid-response is reasonably neutral. This headphone has a slight emphasis in vocal sibilance, similar to that of the Allo S4X, but the Peacock does not shove vocals into your ears, unlike some products from Audeze, Meze, Beyerdynamic, or Focal. Its presentation in this region is clear and permits you to hear obvious and some subtle details. The treble has a marginal emphasis near the upper treble area, or thereabouts. It's somewhat reminiscent of the Allo S4X again. The Avantone Planar, in contrast, is closer to neutral. The Peacock's detail retrieval is above average. Its soundstage is above average. If all of this seems vague, then you should really go back and watch part 1. I go into a lot more detail in that video. Anyway, my conclusion is that the Peacock is a fairly neutral sounding headphone. When I compared the Peacock to the 14 alternatives, I was curious to find out what differences I could hear. Those 14 competitors are the following: the LCD-X, LCD3, LCD4Z, Meze Empyrean, Focal Utopia, Focal Stelia, Focal Clear, Sennheiser HD800S, Sony MDR-Z1R, Dan Clark Ether C-Flow 1.1, Dan Clark Ether 2, ZMF Auteur, the Head Audio Headphone Revision 2, and the Meze Lyric. That's a lot. I found a couple of things while doing the A-B comparisons. First, all of these headphones have different sound signatures. They don't sound identical. Second, out of the 15 headphones, including the Peacock, in this head-to-head test, only 2 stood out: the HD800S and the Focal Clear. The 800S has the widest soundstage, the most detail, the greatest separation, and the most obvious placement of any headphone I've tested. The Focal Clear has the next most detail, clarity, separation, and placement. These two headphones were noticeably, drastically different from the others, night and day, if you will. The rest of the headphones fell into the same group. Again, keep in mind I'm talking about performance. I've already told you the sound signatures are different. If we narrow our discussion to just performance, then it's obvious that the vast majority of these headphones, that is all but the HD800S and the Focal Clear, have very similar performance with some variations. Except for the HD800S and the Clear, the rest of the headphones tend to have very similar soundstage, clarity, detail, and placement. Yes, there are variances, but it's really hard to justify claiming that one of these headphones has a lot more soundstage or detail. It was interesting to note the different ways these headphones represented the music. I'll give you an example. While their ability to render detail and soundstage was similar, the Dan Clark Ether C-Flow 1.1 and Ether 2 sounded more muffled than any other headphone I tested. There was less separation and clarity, generally speaking, on the Dan Clark headphones. The Meze headphones tended to accentuate sibilance and treble more than some other headphones. The Focal Stelia had the most bass emphasis out of all of the headphones I tested. While the specific performance was similar, the sound signatures weren't identical among them. In fact, the only headphones that seemed to come close to matching any other were the ZMF Auteur and the Peacock and the LCD 4Z. The Auteur and Peacock and 4Z have neutral tuning that seems somewhat similar. This brings me to my third observation. None of the 15 headphones in this test had obvious sonic issues. I did not hear any distortion or ringing or timbre that was misrepresented. While I don't think any of these headphones are value, every single one of them competently and cohesively render their particular sound signatures. Once again, I know this may sound pretty vague. You should watch part 2 of my review to get more details. In that video, I compared all of these headphones. The bottom line is that while the Peacock does not sound like the rest in my comparisons, its performance is not particularly different from them. The Peacock's performance, that is, its soundstage, detail retrieval, clarity, separation, and placement, fall in line with how most of the other headphones in my comparisons performed. Anybody who says that the LCD 4Z has a lot more detail than the Peacock should do an actual A/B test using strict testing parameters. I've had the same criticism for anyone who says that the Peacock excels in any particular category compared to these other headphones. So, if the Peacock's performance is very similar to these other uber premium headphones, why are there divergent opinions? This brings us to the next section: audiophile nonsense. When Sendy Audio asked if I would review the Peacock, I purposefully did not read or watch other reviews. I wanted a fresh perspective. After my initial week of listening, I began taking notes about the experience. And near the end of my review process, I decided to get a general impression about how others had received the Peacock. While I did not delve into reviews, I did glance at a few comments on hifi and Reddit. I also asked my viewers to tell me what they've heard from others. The opinion about the Peacock is split. Either some people have fallen in love with this headphone and believe it's the best ever, or they hate this headphone and think it's utter garbage. These are what I call diametrically opposed opinions. These, in other words, are extremes. Some of the more particular comments about the Peacock are the following, in no particular order. The Peacock suffers from unit variation, or that the Peacock's frequency response graph shows a lack of smooth transitions or incompetence. The Peacock has no seal around the ears. The Peacock lacks bass. The Peacock is not dynamic or resolving. On the other hand, some claim that the Peacock is among the most resolving headphones in the market. Or, in the paraphrased words of the audiophile hype man himself, the Peacock is God tier. When we get such divergent responses from the same product, with little to no feedback from the middle ground, there's cause for concern. You might reason that the answer for these polar opposite views are unit variances. If you don't know what that means, here's a brief explanation. Unit variance is essentially inconsistent tuning from one unit to the next. Unit variances are expected in handmade products, but these variances occur even in products that are machine-made. There is no such thing as repeated perfection, at least not on this plane of reality. But I think unit variance is an easy excuse. It's one I hear far too often whenever people disagree about a product. Maybe the headphone or IEM you listened to was not the same as the one everyone else listened to. Maybe that's why opinions are so different. At least that's the claim. There is a way to figure out if there were unit variances with the Peacock. You can do a bit of forensic accounting. For example, let's say a reviewer claims that the Peacock is trash because it lacks bass, has no dynamics, and does not seal around the ears. If he was loaned the Peacock, then backtrack to whoever reviewed the headphones before this particular reviewer, and also track ahead to whoever reviewed this specific Peacock unit afterwards. Compare what these people said. If all or the majority of the reviewers in this example say essentially the same thing after listening to exactly the same unit, then that is strong evidence for unit variance. You would of course need to repeat this forensic accounting on the other side, where opinion about the Peacock is glowing. This is something Sendy Audio would need to help determine, since they would know which particular unit went where. The point is that saying the differences could be attributed to unit variance is only the beginning of the investigation. You still have more work to do before that hypothesis is supported by actual evidence. Let's assume for the sake of argument that there is unit variation with the Peacock. For a headphone that cost $1,500, should we expect more consistency? I think the answer is yes, of course. But before we start throwing Sendy Audio under the bus, let's not forget that other brands have similar concerns. Indeed, for years, people have claimed that audeze headphones have unit variances. If you search for a discussion of any brand's unit variation, you will come across someone complaining about it. So it's not like Sendy Audio is alone, assuming unit variance is the issue. What bothers me about this particular hypothesis is that some people are quick to accept this explanation and not put it into context. Unit variations are expected. The real question is, how much variation is there? With the Peacock, the extreme opinions would have you think that the variations are, well, extreme. That would require us to further assume that Sendy Audio screwed up so badly that they sent to various reviewers several headphones that had wildly divergent tuning and performance. We of course cannot ignore this possibility. But we should also consider that Sendy Audio has been making headphones for a while, and we shouldn't be too quick to accept this argument. After all, every headphone brand has strident promoters and dissenters. Some people swear by Grado headphones while others think that Grado makes garbage with a headband. Is that unit variation? Frankly, I think that extreme unit variation seems like an outlier explanation, especially without hard facts and evidence. The next audiophile complaint about the Peacock is the frequency response graph. Some say essentially that the graph shows a lack of finesse, a lack of smooth transitions, peaks at certain frequencies, yada yada yada. Fine. Why not take a look at a bunch of other graphs from other uber premium headphones? Let's compare. We'll use measurements from Critical. Here's the LCD3. Now the LCD-X. Here's the LCD4. Or how about the Focal Utopia? The Focal Stellia? The headphone? We could do this all day long. Every one of these headphones has graphs you could complain about. Frequency response graphs are helpful, but not gospel. They are a general indicator, not hard truth. I mean, if you look at the Sifka Robin graph, you might get the impression that the mids are recessed. They're actually forward when you listen to the headphone. If you feel that you need graphs to help you make a decision, that's perfectly fine. But it's far too common to find people making conclusory statements about gear based entirely on measurements. It doesn't really seem fair. Let's also briefly discuss about the Peacock's dynamics. We discussed this in part 2 near the end. I explained that I have not seen specifications from any company that lists values for headphone dynamics or dynamic range. This phrase is overly used and fundamentally vague. It's an excuse for someone to promote or demote a headphone they just don't like. Or they tend to love. When you do actual comparisons, true A/B tests, you learn that a headphone's clarity, detail retrieval, soundstage separation, and placement directly impact your perception of not only the sound signature, but also its dynamic range or dynamics. The ability to hear the quietest moments in a song along with the loudest is relative to many factors, including the mix, the other instruments in the song, the headphones' performance in the specific categories I've already mentioned, and of course, how you wear the headphones. To make conclusory statements that a headphone has amazing or terrible dynamics is both misleading and vague. I don't want to rehash what I already said in the last video. If you're interested, go watch it. What I'm trying to convey is that you need to be mindful about these types of nonsensical audiophile terms. As far as the Peacock is concerned, its performance is on par with other headphones in its price category. There are differences among them all, but nothing remotely jaw-dropping one way or another. Yes, there are contradictory, diametrically opposed opinions about the Peacock's so-called dynamics. There could be numerous explanations for the flamboyant praise and the vitriolic hate. But one thing that is missing from each opinion is actual, true, strict A/B test comparisons. It doesn't cost much money for a passive A/B switch and a few auxiliary cables. For about $50, you can have yourself an A/B testing setup. I just don't understand why reviewers refuse to do this. It baffles me. Some of these people have tens of thousands of subscribers, make money from YouTube ads, Patreon, affiliate links, and whatever kickbacks they get from manufacturers and resellers. Why can't they just spend $50 to help improve their process? It just seems to me that if you're tired of business as usual, you should ask reviewers to start doing meaningful comparisons with strict parameters. Perhaps if we start seeing proper A/B comparisons with specificity and detail, and reviewers stop promoting their own personal preferences, then we might get a clearer understanding of products, and this includes the Peacock as well. My bottom line is this: if you think you're getting God-level performance from these premium headphones, I believe you're mistaken. And anyone who claims that one of these headphones is obviously better than another is just telling you their personal preference. It's not objective, it's not independent truth, it's someone's personal opinion about the sound signature of two or more products. That's it. The Peacock doesn't do anything revolutionary, no matter what some people claim. Nor is the Peacock a disaster as others have described. The Peacock is a competent headphone. It has its own particular sound signature. It leans neutral. It's not intended as an analytical tool. Other companies make bold claims about that and fall flat on their faces, but Sendy Audio hasn't. They really don't make any material claims about the sound, and the vague stuff they do say could be interpreted in different ways. If you've the mind to buy an uber premium headphone, then I think the Peacock is as worthy an option as any of the others. When it comes to sound signature, I can't find any reason why this headphone should be outright rejected or lauded. There's no harshness, no audible distortion, and no objectively euphoric experience. What I can say is that Sendy Audio did some things that other companies refuse to do. Where accessories are concerned, Sendy Audio is among only a very few number of companies that actually includes worthwhile stuff with their expensive gear. The Peacock's build, though big and bulky, is otherwise faultless. And while you might hate the aesthetics, at least they've done something different. Do I think the Peacock is value? No, not at all. But is it worth considering in this price category if you're set on buying something expensive? Yeah, it is. If you want a premium headphone, then the Peacock should be on the list along with the rest. At the end, you can reject it for a multitude of reasons, but that's true for every single piece of gear, irrespective of price. If you were to ask me if I would want the Peacock in my collection, my answer would be yes. I think someday I might put this headphone into my collection, but not because I think it's value, because I think it's unique. Whether it's the right one for you is something you will have to discover for yourself. But just be cautious. Neither extreme opinions about this product seem justified, and that holds true for every single uber premium headphone I spoke of in this review process. I hope this 3-part review has been helpful. It took a lot of time and effort to put this together. If there's one suggestion I want to make to everybody, it's this: be skeptical, be thoughtful, and never buy the hype.